The witness, Masih Alinejad, an Iranian-born female journalist who had gained prominence for exposing corruption and was forced to leave Iran in 2009. She resided in London before moving to the US, where she is living there with her family. The witness has campaigned for women's rights in Iran. She is the founder of the campaign against compulsory hijab laws, known as White Wednesdays, where women in Iran take off their Islamic headwear and send videos and pictures to the witness. The witness has also campaigned relentlessly for human rights since leaving Iran, exposing violations and miscarriages of justice. She's extremely popular in Iran, so much that the regime started a propaganda campaign against her. More than 10 television programs have been devoted to demonize the witness, from broadcasting fake news alleging that she was raped in a London underground in presence of her son, to allegations that she received payments from foreign intelligence services. The witness family had been targeted. Her sister was forced to denounce the witness in front of the cameras on state television. Her mother suffered more than 2 hours of interrogation. One of the witness brothers, Ali, was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment for the crime of contacting the witness. In 2019, the president of Tehran Revolutionary Court decreed whoever assists the witness by sending pictures and videos will be sentenced to 1 to 10 years imprisonment. On July 13th of this year, FBI declared that it has foiled a plot by the Islamic Republic Ministry of Intelligence to kidnap the witness to Venezuela and from there to Iran. On the same day, the US Justice Department issued indictments against 4 Iranian intelligence agents that they are now in custody in the United States. Ms. Alinejad, thank you for accepting our invitation and appearing here as a witness to the tribunal. The witness had not submitted a written statement, but she will make a presentation as to the work she has done in connection with the massacre of Aban in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Thank you very much for attending the tribunal. Could you give your full name, please?
Yes. Salam. Hi, everyone. My name is Masih Alinejad.
Thank you. And would you just repeat after me? I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth.
من سوگند یاد میکنم که حقیقت رو
I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Because for me, this is an issue that I really want to talk in Persian, my own language, if you don't mind.
We don't mind
because I'm sure that the mothers are listening to my testimony. So.
Whatever you're most comfortable
Fantastic.
speaking
Thank you.
in. First, Counsel will ask you some questions and elicit your testimony, and then that will be followed up by questions from the panel. And because we don't have a statement from you, if you could just be mindful that translation is happening and just moderate your pace a little.
Totally understand. میفهمم.
Thank you.
Ms. Alinejad, since November 2019, you have campaigned for the families of the victims of Aban massacre and produced a number of documentaries about that event. Can you explain to the tribunal your work, and then you can make your statement? Thank you.
از همون آبان
From the month of Aban, when the protests started, a lot of us, we were looking at what was happening inside Iran. And like thousands of other Iranians outside of the country, when I saw that they cut off the internet in the month of Aban for people, I did not know what was happening in Iran. But once the internet was restored, like many other colleagues of mine, I was bombarded by videos the mothers had sent me, the other people had sent me, and all of them showed what the government was doing, and that the government with through a lot of violence, had killed a lot of people. Then we did not have statistics, and they were not giving us a correct figure, but therefore we relied on the videos that we received. Before anything else, I would like to say that instead of me, I wish all those mothers were sitting here, those who prepared the videos, those who sent them to me. The mothers who were told that preparing a video and sending it would condemn them to more than 10 years in prison, but they still did it. And I would like to testify that they sent videos that showed that their children were shot in their head, in their chest, etc.
Down a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Yes, as usual, I speak too quickly. Pooya Bakhtiari was one of those people who was shot in his skull. Peshman Qolipur, he was 18 years old. When I talked to the mother, his mother said that she saw 5 places in the heart where he had been shot. Amel Shahbazi had been shot in the neck. That's what the family saw. The people that I talked to, the families that testified that their loved ones had been shot in their hearts were a lot of people. The other point that I would like to indicate here is that in all the talks that I had with the families, they said that the children did not have any tear gas, did not have any weapons, and this is completely contradictory to what the government has said. They have alleged that because the protesters were violent, then they were responded to violently. And what proves this is the testimony of 2 mothers whose children were killed in front of them. The mother of Mahdi Daemi, whose video I have seen. When the video was sent to me, I looked at it, it took my breath away. Her son was killed in her own embrace. When he was being killed, he raised his arms to calm down his mother, and he expired. The bullet was shot to him by the security forces in front of the mother, who testifies that she saw that Pooya Bakhtiari was holding the hand of the child. They were both participating in the protests of Aban. And when the tear gas was thrown at them, they lost each other. And the mother testifies that she identified the blood-stained corpse of his son being carried on the shoulders of other people. And she said, "My son, my son." So these are the families who have testified about it, so that in this international tribunal, it can be presented to show that the children did not have any weapons and they were not doing anything violent. Wahid Danvar was one of those people who made a video with his camera. That was the only weapon that he had, and his mother was also with him. He was sending the video to his family, and it stopped when they killed him. The security forces killed him. All these mothers that I named, they have testified from within Iran, and they have narrated the violence perpetrated by the government through the cameras and the mobile phones. These mothers went to the same streets where their children were shot, were killed, so that they can testify how they were killed. I testified that the Islamic Republic has obtained a guarantee from every single family whose children were killed not to talk with the media. Some of these families were told that despite the fact that we are delivering the body to you, you have to pay for the bullet which has been shot to your children. I am going to give you 2 examples. Kamal Faraji was a worker he was from a poor class of society, and the family was told, if you do not give us 70 million 2 months, we are not going to deliver the body to you. Amel Shahwazi is the mother of 2 children, and the family was told, if you do not give us 20 million, if you don't pay that sum, we are not going to deliver the body to you. I would like to testify that the families of many of those who were killed were not permitted to bury their loved ones where they live. The history goes back to Khavaran, the cemetery, 1360s, after the revolution, when the families found themselves over there. It was the first circle of seeking justice, and the government came to this conclusion that in Aban, they had to force the families to bury the bodies in far-off places where they did not live themselves. And I am extremely sorry to be able to give you only a few cases because the time is limited. Navid Behboudi is another example. He lived in Karaj, but during the night she was forced to take the body of the son to Mahfizan village, somewhere else far away. Mahdi Daemi, living in Karaj, was forced to bury in Ajibuzai village near Rasht. Pejman Gholipur, the mother has to travel every week from Tehran to a village in Langarud. Reza Gudarzi has to go to Burujerd to visit the burial place of his child because he was not permitted to bury the child in the cemetery where he lived. This going to far-off places for the burial places of their friends is...
To interrupt, so sorry, because it will prevent me from asking questions later. When you mention where the funeral was and where the people were living, can you just give some idea of the distance so we don't have to go back to everything you mentioned and ask you to talk about distance again, please? I'm very sorry, Chair.
Sure. From Karaj...
From Karaj to the village where Pejman Gholipur is buried, you have to drive for 5 hours to reach there. From Tehran to Burujerd, anybody knows what the distance is? It's a 10-hour drive. It's a mother who has to take the bus 10 hours only to go and visit the burial place of her child. And for this reason, some families have had to migrate forcibly, that's to say, to change the place that they used to live, to go to be near to those who lived. Like, for example, the mother of Mahdi Daemi, who has rented a house to be near the burial place of her husband. And the main reason for the government is that the mothers should not come together and be with each other near the burial place of their children. I would like to testify that some families have been forced to give a guarantee that if they have an interview with the media, and they have been threatened that if they have an interview with the media, their other children will die, either through a car accident or some other way. Some
families have testified that before receiving the bodies of their children, they had committed autopsy on the child, on their children, and they had taken the bullet out so that there would be no way to determine which bullet had killed the individual. I should also refer to the mental and psychological torture against the families. They did not have the chance to mourn for their children, including Puya Bakhtiari's family. They were the first people who did not keep silent after Aban, and they were among the first families who started speaking out. Many of the Iranians who are here know that the mother and father and Puya Bakhtiari, Manuchehr Bakhtiari, the father, always spoke out. And whenever we saw them on TV, they never cried. They were angry. Many may think, why didn't they cry? Because they did not believe that before their eyes their child was killed. and they felt that they should ask for justice. On the 40th day after the death of the child, they were not allowed to hold any ceremonies. And the only time that the mother of Pooya Bakhtiari, in an interview that I had with her, said that she felt that she was mourning and she had the chance to cry was when she was in the solitary confinement. Therefore, I asked her whether I could mention about some of the days that she was calling for justice with a loud voice, but at the same time she was fighting desperation alone. I'm sure that if we invite the mother of Pooya to this tribunal, she will never cry. But she allowed me to show you the moment she entered her house after 5 months when she went back home. I asked the tribunal to show the film of the mother of Pooya Bakhtiari, the film that shows that the film that was taken when the father of Pooya was still in prison. The mother of Pooya decided that after 5 months to step in a house where she lived with her son. And this film shows that the families, no matter how far they shout, and maybe they don't even cry before the cameras, but they have been under great mental pressures. Would it be possible to show the film, please?
من ناهید شیرپیشه مادر پویا بختیاری هستم. الان که دارم این فیلم رو براتون میگیرم، ساعت رو نگاه کنه. این ساعت 1 ساعت عقبه. به خاطر اینکه اصلا کسی اینجا زندگی نمیکنه که بخواد ساعت رو 1 ساعت بکشه جلو. از سال 99 از سال تحویل که ما باید اینجا بودیم، با پویا سال تحویل میکردیم و معمولا پویا این ساعت رو 1 ساعت میکشید جلو. الان نه پویایی هست، نه زمان برای من اهمیتی داره، نه سال تحویل، هیچ. زندگی من سقف خونه من خراب شد، داغون شد، چراغ خونم خاموش شد. به موقع من نگاه کنین. دیگه من به چی دلخوش باشم؟ زندگی ما از من گرفتن، همه کسمو، همه چیزمو، پسری که با هم دیگه دوتایمون زیر این سقف زندگی میکردیم، شاد بودیم، میخندیدیم، میگفتیم. اما دیگه این خونه جای زندگی نیست برای من یه زن تنها بدون پسرم کجا زندگی کنم؟ چیکار کنم؟ این خونه تحملش برای من سخته. 5 ماهه پویا از این در نیامده تو. این اتاق پویاست. این لباسای بچمه. بچم امسال زمستون اینا رو نپوشید. بچم زمستون 98 رو ندید. لباساش همینجوری موندن رو چوب رفته. آخ مادر بمیرم برات. لباسایی که تن نکرد، لباسایی که تو کمد موندن.
Sufferings of the mothers. And this is only part of the sufferings of mothers when they are alone. And there are many others who can testify with me that they have never seen the mother of Pooya to cry. But there are mothers who fought against suicide and the temptation to suicide. The mother of Farzad Ansari, who we witnessed her his father's testimony today. According to his daughter, Farzan Ansari Far, has been saved from suicide, and his knife was taken from him because he couldn't tolerate living any longer. And I would like to testify here that, similar to the mother of Bakhtiari, were many who did not even have the chance to talk to media because they could not overcome their sorrow. There were mothers who were arrested, there were mothers who were threatened, and there were mothers who were beaten. Part of the other people who, in their interviews, announced that how they were treated by the arresters, by the officials, and how far they were under pressure. 9 mothers with the pictures of their children went to Azadi Square in Tehran to object. They were beaten up. And during interrogation, the mother of Reza Muazzeni Gudarzi, 19-year-old, Reza Muazzeni Gudarzi was a 19-year-old boy who, a famous film of whom was shown in the social media, who says that I'm Reza. And his mother testified that in order to torture him, this film was shown to him several times in prison. And the mother said that I cannot tolerate hearing the voice of my son during interrogation anymore. And Pejman Ghalipur's mother, 18-year-old boy who was killed by 5 bullets, he said that she was treated like criminals. First of all, her hair was pulled, and when her hair was pulled, another mother held her legs so that she would not be arrested. And she said that she could see with her own eyes that when she was being pulled, another mother was being pulled on the asphalt behind her, and a number of huge officials and security officials were also arresting some other mothers because of holding the picture of their children, and they were taken away. And Ibrahim Kitabdar's mother was one of the individuals who was arrested several times and was beaten up several times. She was a mother who says that she was searched bodily, and during the interrogations she was told that we killed your son and we did a good thing by killing him. The mother of Navid Behboudi, when she was arrested, her crime was that why she had celebrated his birthday, and his mother said that the security officer beat her chest and said that I was the one who killed your son, and I will kill your other child as well. The mother of Mohammad Dastan Khan, 15-year-old. When she was arrested, she was told that if you don't delete your Instagram page, your other child will be also arrested. I testify that there are many of these mothers who wish to die because of the pressures, but their pressure and sorrow was so huge that they found each other and they decided to tell this tribunal how much pressure they suffered. Kitabdar's mother film, Ibrahim Kitabdar's mother, will be shown now. She is only going to explain about a part of the pressures that the security forces have exerted on her.
مادر ابراهیم کتابدار
Ibrahim Kitabdar's
2
mother.
ساله ابراهیممو نمیبینم. من به این شکایتمو برم به کی بگم؟ به کی بگم؟ این شکایتو به کی بگم من؟ بچه هام بی پدر موندن. دادگاه میرم، هر جا میرم، قاتل بچه‌مو که بهم نمیگن. اون روزم رفتم تو دادگاه، گفتم آقا 2 سال پسر منو کشتین. کشتیم که کشتیم، خوب کاری کردیم. من به این شکایتمو به کی بگم؟ کجا برم؟ بچه هامو آواره کردن، بی پدر گذاشتن. خودمم نمیدونم چی کار کنم، کجا برم، به کی بگم. این جهان، تو این دنیا، یعنی یک نفر نیست به داد من برسه، به این بچه ها برسه. من برم به شکایت ما به کی بگم؟ کجا برم؟
Anniversary of Aban, mothers who were supposed to gather around the burial place of their children have received calls from the security officials and have been threatened. The mother of Mojaddad bought 20 white pigeons to release next to the burial place of her son, but there are security officials sitting there next to her house to keep them under house arrest, both her and also her pigeons, and they didn't let her go out to find the other mothers. And Jafar Panah's mother was also threatened that if she would hold a funeral, then things might have happened to her other children. She stood before the camera and said that, "Come and execute me. Kill me, shoot me, so that I will leave this world. I won't keep silent anyway." And she wanted the world to hear that she didn't have the chance to hold a funeral. Moin Far's mother had two children. A sister who was psychologically dependent on her brother. And after Mehdad was killed, she was suffering so much, and finally she got sick. And she was also called and threatened that she did not have the right to hold any funeral or any ceremony for the child. Wahid Anwar's father was threatened. He was a disabled, war disabled, and he has been released on bail, and his mother has also been abused verbally, and the handcuff was used, and this handband, which was a sign for justice seeking, was being taken off of her hand, and she was told if she wouldn't take this wristband off, she would be taken to prison. And I should also refer to the last statement from the mother of another victim. Pejman Qolipour's mother will explain to you what happened to her. And finally, the request of all these mothers is that justice justice seeking has no meaning in Iran, because not only the justice seekers are being threatened and put into prison, but also complaining before the criminal and the killer what would be the use, and they won't complain to a killer for the killing of their children. And Pejman Qolipour's mother will represent many families who also asked for the holding of an international tribunal for the trial and also punishment of the officials of the Islamic Republic. I ask the court to show the film of the mother of Pejman Qolipour, please.
همه عزیزان، من محبوب رمضانی مادر پژمان قلیپور هستم. جوان 18 ساله‌ای که توی آبان 98 کشته شد و من مادر به خاطر این که میگم قاتل بچم کیه مجرمم. تهدیدم میکنن و میگن نباید بگی قاتل بچت کیه. نباید جایی بگی که چه اتفاقی افتاده. نباید جایی بگی که چی شده. باید سکوت کنی. ولی من سکوت نکردم. پژمان من 18 سالش بود. امسال دومین سال تولدشو که گرفتم، تازه پسرم شد 20 ساله. جشن تولد 20 سالگیشو سر مزار گرفتم. سر مزاری که صبحش زنگ زدن و گفتن که به خاطر کرونا نباید مراسمی گرفته بشه. و بعدش قبل از اینکه من برسم تاج گل تولد بچه من که کادوی تولد من به پسرم بود میدزدن و میبرن. من توی وطنم توی ایرانم حق دادخواهی ندارم. اگه بگم که بچه‌مو کشته مجرمم. ما رفتیم صرفا به خاطر اینکه فریاد بزنیم و بگیم قاتل بچه هامون کیه و تنها چیزی که با هامون بود قاب عکس بچه هامون بود. 6-7 تا مادر بودیم که وسط خیابون رفتیم کنار میدون آزادی رفتیم و پناه بردیم اونجا. گفتیم شاید یکی به دادمون برسه و بگه قاتل بچه‌تون کیه. ما رو گرفتن، بردن، مأمور زنشون زدنمون. بله، کتک خوردیم. به جرم چی؟ به جرم اینکه میگیم دادخواهیم. جرممون چیه؟ میگیم قاتل بچه‌مون کیه. یکی از مادرها رو گرفتن و دستبند آبی که به نشانه نماد دادخواهی ما به دستمون بستیم و گرفته بودن توی اونجا و با الفاظ رکیک و حرفهای زشتی که به این مادر زدن دستبندش رو قیچی میکنن و تهدیدش میکنن که اگه دفعه دیگه یه حرف بزنی با هفتیر میایم توی خونه بالای سر خودت. ما دادخواهیم. به فریاد ما برسین، به داد ما برسین، به ما بگین قاتل بچه ما کیه، به ما بگین کی بچه ما رو کشته، به ما بگین ما باید به کجا پناه ببریم. به داد ما برسین. ما توی ایران، توی وطن خودمون عزیزترین کسمون رو از دست دادیم و اگه معترض بشیم میشیم مجرم. من مجرمم، من پرونده دارم، پرونده من سنگینه و برای من میگن که پرونده‌ات سنگینه به خاطر اینکه فریاد زدم قاتل بچه من کیه. این پسر منه، پژمانم، جوون 18 سالم، تاق پسر منه. این عکسای بچه‌های آبانه، بچه‌هایی که توی آبان کشته شدن و مادراشون و پدراشون به اسم اینکه دادخواهن مجرمن. نوید افکاری بعد از آبان. عکسای پسرم، اتاق پسرم، نوید بهبودی، بچه‌ای که توی آبان کشته شد. و تخت خالی پسرم که هر روز من باید ببینم و کنار تخت خالی پسرم زجه بزنم و کسی جوابگوی من نباشه و هیچ کس به من نگه که پسر تو رو کی کشته. لباسای پشمانم که پشت در آویزون کردم به امید روزی که برگرده خونه و دنبال لباساش نگرد. کمد لباس پسرم، وسایل بچه، وسایل جوون 18 سالم که تنها جرمش فهمیدم بود و گفتش که من فهمیدم، من میدونم. توی اون جعبه لباسهای خونی پسرمه، لباسهای خونی بچم که از تنش توی بیمارستان در آوردن، لباسهای سوراخش، کابیشن تنش که پشت و جلوی کابیشنش سوراخ بود چون با تیر جنگی کشته بودنش، کتونی که اون شب پاش بود، کمربندی که روی لباسش بود و تمام سگک کمربندش پر از خون بود و لباسهای پر از خون پسرم نگر داشتم تا روز انتقام. من لباسهای پسرم همه رو نگه داشتم، لباسهای سوراخ و پر از خون پسرم رو نگه داشتم، لباسهای پر از خون و سوراخ جوون 18 سالم رو نگه داشتم به عنوان مدرک که نشون بدم به کل دنیا و جهان، نشون بدم که جوون 18 ساله منو با بیرحمی کشتن، با بیرحمی کشتن و زندگی منو نابود کردن. نه زندگی منو، زندگی هزاران خانواده توی آبان رو نابود کردن و خانواده ها رو سیاه پوش کردن. با خانواده های آبان عهد بستیم لباس مشکی تنمون رو در نیاریم تا زمانی که انتقام خون به ناحق ریخته بچه هامون رو بگیریم. حالا اینا تهدید میکنن، بذار تهدید بکنن، مهم نیست. تا زمانی که نفس میکشم، تا زمانی که هستم، منتقم خون به ناحق ریخته جوونم هستم و تا انتقام خون پشمانم رو نگیرم هرگز سکوت نمی کنم. به داد ما برسین، صدای ما باشین و یه جایی اگر وجدانی هست، اگه شرفی هست، به فریاد ما برسین.
خیلی ممنونم از قضات ما.
I would like to express my appreciation towards the honorable judges, and also towards the mothers who sent us their testimony. They have all taken a big risk, and each one of them could be prosecuted, but consciously they made the choice to raise their voice so that it will be heard in international fora, because seeking justice in Iran has borne no fruits for them so far. I thank you very much, and I am very sorry that I could not talk about the rest of them who are also being pressured. Thank you.
Ms. Alinejad, you have produced a number of documentaries in connection with the massacre of Aban from the families. Can you tell the tribunal how many of these documentaries you have made and where you have managed to exhibit them?
The number of killed people was reported to be 1,500 by Reuters, but human rights organizations have not been able to give the exact statistics. I have been able to talk about 25 families of the killed people, but I know very well that there are lots of families who don't have access to the media. But personally, I have talked to 25 of the families through their mobile phones. I have heard the stories, how their children were killed, what happened to them, how they took delivery of their corpses, and all of these I have presented in my Instagram and also in the Voice of America and in other media.
Thank you, Ms. Alinejad. The panel may have some questions for you.
Thank you very much for the testimony. Can I just ask a couple of questions? First of all, as I understand it, you're well known as an activist, and is that the way the videos and the mothers contacted you, or was there something more formal?
That's a very good question.
This is a very good question. I started a campaign called "Our Camera is Our Weapon." And in this campaign, I have explained that the government has weapons, is armed, and always denies the killings. But the families, the mothers, have their camera, and they can record the killings. So I invited the families to become the narrators of their own suffering. And therefore, a lot of families from within Iran tell me their stories and send me their videos. As Mr. Sabi also indicated, this will frighten the Islamic Republic, because the best and the strongest testimony and witnesses are the families. If it were not because of the families, I would not have been able to have any voice to say anything. The family of Ibrahim Kitabdar was threatened. Mr. Hossein Salami told that family that if they have any contacts with me, Masih Alinejad, if they send me any film, they would imprison him. She resisted it, stood in front of them and said, "You can kill me, but I will work until the day that Khamenei is put in prison." The mother of Puya also the same. They are under pressure. Nevertheless, they decide to send their stories through their cameras because they know that it will be heard by international fora.
And just to get a bit of your background,
My background?
Yes, in terms of how you ended up in the US and how you became subject to the regime's attempt to rendition you.
داستان زندگی من یک
The story of my life is this. I was a journalist inside Iran. I don't actually even know where to start because the story of my life is also different. I come from a very small village from the north of Iran. I grew up in a very conservative, religious, traditional family. And I was dismissed from everywhere. In the high school threw me out because I was too inquisitive. The Majlis threw me out because I disclosed the salary slips of the parliamentarians. If somebody in Europe does that, they give them a prize. Then I started writing. I critiqued them in my articles, and they took it out from me. I criticized Alinejad. They took it out. They took it from me, and they threw me out of everywhere, social media, etc. But they could not take Iran out of me. People knew me when I was in Iran, and still they keep the relationship with me, the contacts with me. And the campaign that I have started is that every individual Iranian can become his or her medium, his or her representative through their own camera. That's what I'm doing. I don't know whether my answer suffices or not. If not, I can go into more detail. And in 1988, when there was a widespread protest, at that time I contacted 57 families of those who had been killed, families who wanted to come to me and talk to me, and at that time I documented their voices, and it could be for that reason that also the families of those who were killed in Aban knew of me and came to me.
In relation to the women that spoke who'd lost their sons, one of them, I think the last one whose name I missed, she spoke about an informal group of women.
Mahbube.
Right, and can you tell us about that group?
The group of mothers?
The group of mothers.
In Iran, the movement of seeking justice has a long history. It started from the Khavaran cemetery when group executions were formed and were done. And mothers found each other and contacted each other. And this is something that has continued. That's to say that in the different decades when people are killed, their mothers find each other somehow. And meeting each other makes them stronger. They overcome their silence, and their petitions become international. And Pejman Qolipur and Puya's mothers are two of these. They said they decided to be together with each other and to protest together because the mother and the son were on the street together in the Aban protest when the children were killed. So they decided that instead of filing a complaint with the authorities, they decided to go to the same street holding the pictures of their children and protest there. They said that our children were killed because they protested on the streets. We are not going to go to the authorities to file our complaint, and we are going to go to the street and say no to the government of the Islamic Republic. And the mother of Pejman Qolipur, that's what she said when I talked to her. She said we started with the other mothers to become the voice of the protest of our friends, but now they say that we are criminals. For example, when they arrested the mothers, they were told that they are like thieves, like a criminal. They have to hold a number in front of their chest to be photographed, and then they are going to record, to make a rap sheet for them, as you would say. And they said our crime is only the picture of our children that we brought them to the street. So as beside this number that you are putting on our chest, we are also putting the picture of our children, so that anybody who looks at these pictures will know that what we have done is that. So these mothers who on Azadi Square are being beaten up, are being arrested, are physically searched, are threatened that their other children are going to be killed, also they have a common demand, and their demand is that they are seeking justice, and they say that we want the murderers of our children to be condemned and to be tried in international fora.
Thank you very much. Apart from video material, have you written articles on the situation in Iran and what has happened?
You are asking me whether I have written articles. You are asking me whether I have written articles in English regarding the situation in Iran. Yes, I have.
خیلی.
Many of them. I have written many. It's my job, it's my occupation, and especially when I see that the protests in Iran are not heard in international media, and especially when I see that the protests are connected only to the rise in the price of petrol, I try to write about it, and parallel to that, I bring in my interviews with the families of the killed people, etc. I have written in the Washington Post, for example. Right now that I am talking to you, Channel 1 of the Dutch television right now, today, has talked about it. The important newspaper in Belgium has reflected something from the mother of Pejman Gholipur. I have written in the televisions of the world, I have written that the protests are on the streets without any weapons, but the response is bullets. And the Auburn protests, it's not that they had only protested, they were arrested and they were taken to prison, and many of them were condemned in prisons. The mother of Mahmoud Barad Hosseini, the mother of another killed person, and many others, they took part in the protests, and they immediately arrested them, and they were condemned to execution. Afsari was one of them who was arrested in the month after, in Deimah. He was a wrestler, and I have written a lot of articles about him, and I even had a campaign in Iran. I invited sports people to come and to talk that when you protest in Iran, either they are going to hang you, either they are going to torture you in prison until you die, or they shoot a bullet to you until you die. Or the protests of many families whose children were killed under torture in prison. Sardar Beheshti is one of them. This was the 9th anniversary, and on the 9th anniversary of the son who was killed under torture, the mother was also arrested. And this is a fact that many of my colleagues are trying to write international forum about it, and I have written a lot about it myself.
I'm more interested in articles about what happened in November 2019, say from the 16th to the 20th of November or thereabouts. Would there be many of those articles that you have written?
In all the articles that I have written, I have preferred to base it on the witnesses in Iran, the families of those who were killed or those who were tortured, etc. So I wanted to narrate with their voice, because I was not in Iran myself, and I could be accused of writing and giving the wrong information. So I chose what could not be denied by the government of Iran, something which is undeniable. Incidentally, the father of Wahid Dadvar sent me his voice today. It will be very interesting if it could be translated. He's telling me wherever you go and whenever you talk, microphone, please. Dear Masih, he's saying, if you go to the Auburn tribunal and if they ask you what happened to us, how our children were killed, how the bodies were delivered, how through so much, to what length they went to fabricate files about the families, you can contact me via Skype from the tribunal itself, so that I can tell you in Persian and you can translate it in English, so that there is somebody living who talks about it and is present who talks about it directly, so that they can hear from the father of one of them, Wahid Dadvar's father, so that everybody over there, the tribunal, can see that it's not fabricated. Because in Iran, they can say it's fabricated. This girl goes and talks about these things. They're all fabricated. In effect, many of the pieces of news that we publish about Aban is denied by the Islamic Republic through their radio, television, or they contradict it through their own lobbies because they have international lobby organs. So I decided as an investigative journalist to give the tribune to the families of those who were killed, to their mothers, their fathers, so that through them I can write about what happened during Aban, particularly when we see that the families of the killed people are accused in international media of violence. They said that the protesters themselves were those who started the violence. Those are the disruptors, the rioters. And these are the same mothers who were present there with their children, along with them. And they started the violence. I just received another message from Alinejad Sheidai, one of those people who was killed in Aban. He was killed in the embrace of the brother. The brother got ill afterwards because they were both of them together, and he was protecting the brother not to go to the protest. He was shot by a bullet, and the other brother wanted to take him to the hospital, and he died before he reached the hospital. So I would like to say in answer to your question that I would like to reflect it in international media because many of them are ignorant about it, and many of them have to give a guarantee that they will write only about what the government wants. The CNN and New York Times, they cannot write whatever they want. So I decided to write what I want. I decided to interview those courageous families who talk to me and to reflect their voice in international media so that their voice can be heard.
Okay, I'll try to be quick now. You said 25 families. Would that mean about 25 children who had died, or more than 25 children, referring to those 25 families alone? Don't go broader now. The question is simple. You spoke to 25 families. Would that mean 25 children or more?
من نفهمیدم. سوال رو متوجه نشدم.
Sorry, I could not understand your question.
داره که داکیومنتری که مستندی که تعیین کردی گفتید راجع به 25 خانواده است. آیا این نشان دهد؟
Said that you had talked about 25 families. Were they related to 25 who were killed or more? Their number was much more. I only succeeded to talk about 25 families because on TV, the image of the picture of these families and mothers should have been seen. Since I cannot just talk on TV only by myself, I could only refer to these 25. But there is an Instagram page on which you can find so many families and mothers who have sent reports on because they can stay anonymous. I have talked to many other families who cannot talk about their children. Muhammad Tahiri, Mohsen Mohammadpour. These are the individuals who have been killed. Ahmad Tamimi in Ahvaz. His mother is now in prison. She cannot speak. Mohsen Mohammadpour was a laborer, 17-year-old laborer. All of you have seen his picture. His picture is up there. Nikyar Isfandiyari, Omid Rezai. Those pictures are all known to me. Their mothers cannot speak out. Therefore, the number of those killed are much more. But our number is low, and threat is a lot, pressure is a lot. Therefore, all families cannot speak out. I even believe that the number of those killed is above 1,500 because some of the researchers and investigators, some of the professors in the U.S. and researchers in the U.S. have prepared a report that in Pais, in autumn in Aban, the number of those killed and buried were much higher than normal cases. But as an investigative journalist, I was only able to record the story of 25 of those who were killed.
Let me try once again. We seem not to be understanding each other. Okay, just think about only the 25 families on whom you made videos. Don't go beyond that now. Just train your mind on that.
Sure.
Now, wait a minute. Those 25 families only, did they relate to 25 children or more than 25 children? Only those families. That's all I want to know.
I think that Mr. Sabi did not understand the question either, and therefore he did not translate it properly to me either. Now the question is that I'm accusing you so that I would not be only accused alone. The 25 people who I interviewed, they want to see whether they were only representing 25 victims. What a correct question, because in Behbahan, only from one family, 2 brothers were killed. Your question is a very right and correct and timely one. I'm really ashamed that I sometimes forget this. So it seems that, do you feel that you're, if you cannot remember all the names, do you also feel sorry? And Ahmad Tamimi was one of the children of that mother died during the demonstrations, but her other child was also executed later. As far as I know, yes, in some of the families there were 2 people who were killed. And I will provide the tribunal with further documents, especially that the situation is continuing. And many other families are sending me further documents, and I will provide you with these documents.
Right. Then, again, no, that's fine. That's fine. You are not expected to remember names, but that's a good general idea. Then the final thing is these 25 families. Let's not go broader now. Only these 25 families. Did they come from a particular province, from a particular area, or did they come from all from 25 different provinces? Was there? I just want to get some idea of where they came from.
First of all,
since I know that many parents are listening to the court, I cannot really decline from mentioning the names. So that's why I need, and I think that I have to mention the names of the 2 brothers who died. Mehrdad Dashti. I've lost his brother's name. There were 2 brothers who are both called Dashti. They were both killed in one day. But many of those who were killed were from Ahwaz. They were killed by military weapons in a bamboo farm. I don't have correct information. Many of these families were threatened not to talk. Therefore, I don't have exact information. There has been a lot of reports on the violence of the authorities, but many of the families in Khuzestan have kept silent because their family members have also been threatened of death. But I may say that in Shiraz, in Behbahan, and in Karaj, there are many of those who were killed were from among the laborers. There were some who were killed from the middle-class families, but most of those who were killed were from the labor families. And contrary to to the previous protests, the protests here did not start in Tehran. Rather, they started in smaller cities and districts. And it was for the first time that sometimes we heard the names of some of these districts and names, because those who were killed in these areas led to the names of these places to be heard by the media. Therefore, some of these objections started from remote areas, from remote provinces in Iran.
It was, I take the point that it was from remote areas, it was mainly from laboring people and not too many from middle-class people. If you can get some exact numbers, you can give them to the prosecution later. Just one more thing. Did they belong to, we talked about class, let's talk about religious grouping. Did most of the people who were killed belong to maybe a particular subgrouping, or you think that it involved all religious groupings? And if you don't know, then tell us that you're not sure.
Iran is a pluralistic society. People who are religious and believe in the Shi'i imams, and those who are really and those who really hate Islam. There are some Baha'is, there are some Zoroastrians, and there are some people who have no religion. I have to be honest because I have promised to say the truth. There are some people who do not believe in Islam at all and who were killed during these protests. And there have been some people who pictures, when you see, you will realize that they were wearing black clothes, and they were in fact mourning for the third Shia Imam. And since I have declared to be truthful, I should say that the mothers of those children who were religious and were in fact mourning for the third Shia Imam have now put black banners at their house, and they say that they don't believe in Muharram anymore, and their Muharram, that they were the third Shia Imam was killed, is Aban killing now. And Muhammad Zadeh was one of the other people who was killed, and in the Shi'i culture has always been said that the Shi'i imams were killed without being given water. And when he was killed, he was taken to the hospital, and they asked their family to pay for the cost of the bullet, and his hand was cut off. And that boy went into coma. He was not able to speak after he came out of coma. Since he was not able to speak, on paper he wrote, and one of his hands was cut off, and he wrote that, "I am thirsty." His mother, whenever I interview her, I cannot help her focus on saying anything else, because she just repeats that my son was killed thirsty. Because I have come from a country where for 40 years the officials of my country have been crying for the thirsty horse of the third Shia Imam. And this mother who has come from a religious family says that, "Why did you kill my son thirsty?" This is the story of the mothers. And some of them were religious, and now they are angry. And some of them were not religious from the very beginning, and their story on Instagram shows it, and you can see that. And some of them, we do not know what the religious affiliations have been. The Islamic Republic had given money to many of the people. It paid blood money so that they would keep silent, with the condition of keeping silent. Some of the families took the blood money because they knew that this would turn into a document to be presented to the international tribunals to stress that this blood money shows that the Islamic Republic has been the killer of their children. But there are many poor families, because they were threatened that if they had received the blood money, they should also keep silent. Their children were introduced as martyrs, and they were forced to keep silent. We don't know the religious affiliation of these children. We just hear the voice of the families who have been under pressure.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry to have bothered you and other people as much as I did. Thank you.
خیلی ممنونم به خاطر سوالای خوبی که پرسیدین و به من فرصت دادین که در مورد
The opportunity to talk about the families of those killed.
Hi, I have two clarification questions, if I may. Let me know if I misheard you, but I think you said at one point that the coverage of what was happening was only limited to the link with the rise in fuel prices. Are you suggesting that there was more reason for people to protest than that?
خیلی خیلی خوشحالم که این سوال رو پرسیدین.
I'm really happy that you asked this question. In all international media, I heard and I read, and you also did, that on the early days they were saying that the protests were because of the increase in the prices of petrol. But from the very first day, you could hear slogans that said "Death to Khamenei, death to dictator," and the like. When in the second anniversary of Aban, all the petrol stations were hacked, and on the petrol stations it was written, Khamenei, where is our petrol? I had an interview with Ibrahim Kitabdar's mother, Ibrahim and many other mothers, and they said that even that slogan over there is wrong because our children did not go out for petrol. We say, where are our children? Where is our right? Where is justice? Where is freedom? Where is dignity? And this was the slogan that all the protesters were chanting on the streets. It has been 2 years that whenever the protesters come to the streets, it is true that they have problems, subsistence problems. But in their protests in Day and in Aban, they clearly say that they don't want Islamic Republic. They don't want the mullahs to rule. And petrol was just an excuse. And this is an issue that really annoys many of the mothers, that why their voice is not being heard in the international media, that their objection is because they don't want the system, the regime. And when their children were killed and they went to the burial places, they repeated the same slogan. They said that they won't take part in the elections because their children were killed because of saying no to the Islamic Republic, not to the increase in the prices of oil.
Thank you so much for that clarification. One more clarification, if I may. You spoke about some of the families taking ildiya, the blood money, and that there was documentation presented with that. Is that what you're suggesting, that there is some kind of documentation that shows that exchange of money and could be some kind of evidence of the government actually making the payment?
I want to ask for permission to ask families to talk about blood money, and I will certainly provide the tribunal with all the documents the families have provided me with on blood money. This is a topic that is best to be spoken by the families. Many of the families did not keep silent after, and they believed that the blood money meant that they could use it as a document in the international tribunals, and this indicated that the Islamic Republic accepted that they had committed a murder, and therefore they paid the blood money. That's why I will provide the tribunal with the necessary documents in this respect.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Alinejad. You are really representing the voice of the mothers who lost their children.
Thank you.
You mentioned about a mother who experienced sexual harassment during their protest. And I also learned from the council this morning and other report that a security agent and some prison official use widespread torture and other ill treatment against men, women, children detained, including sexual violence through stripping, forced nakedness, and so on. And do you have any information that women also experience sexual violence when they are detained?
I am really ashamed that at every moment I'm receiving messages from the mothers of those killed that why I did not explain the story of their children, and this really affects my conscience. This is the first popular tribunal being held in this respect, and everybody is waiting for their children to be mentioned. The families whose children were arrested and imprisoned, they said that they had been threatened of sexual rape many times. I should say that this is a taboo in Iran still, but I am ready to provide documents in this respect to the court. But apart from that, many of the mothers who are seeking justice, they are being labeled by the Islamic Republic, and even during the interrogations they are being humiliated by using sexual words against them, and this will really affect them and would torture them. It breaks their hearts. One of the mothers said that during the interrogation she had a mother whose child was killed. She was told that we can make a case for you that you would not be able to hold your head high before the other mothers after. And women, Iranians know what this means. When they say that they can build up a case, that they could humiliate one person and be a scandal for the individual, everybody would understand what that means. Many of the families have been threatened that if they speak out, maybe not us, but maybe your daughters may be raped. The children, the families of the Aban have been brave. They are not afraid, but allow me not to talk about this issue from myself, and I ask the families to provide their documents themselves, and they can testify in this respect themselves. And I'm really grateful that you expressed your feelings and sentiments before coming to this tribunal. I should say, honestly, I have been under great mental pressure because I'm a mother myself. It has been 2 years that I have not seen my child, and my heart starts beating up. And then I think that mothers were not able to see their children, and they were beaten up, they were tortured, they were physically searched. And seeing these mothers is not easy. I'm really grateful to you to showing your sentiments. I had promised to myself not to cry and to try to be the voice of these mothers, but still I was not successful. A small part of the sufferings of the children was just presented here. One of the mothers is in mental hospital now. And whenever the mothers gather, they take this mother from the hospital so that they would see the mothers of the other children so that she would become a little bit better. But they hold her hands because they're just afraid that she might hit herself or she might just throw herself before a car in the street. If you want the family of that, the families can come and talk how far they are trying to prevent this mother from committing suicide. Or the mother who wrote to me at the last moment that 2 years, it is difficult to tolerate 2 years being away from a child, and I'm surprised at how I could tolerate it myself. I always wish that I go away from the world, and my, in fact, birthday present was to go away from this world, because many of the those who were killed, they considered the day their children were killed as their birthday or the birthday of the children. Thank you for expressing your sentiments.
Could I ask on a different subject, please? One of the things we have to decide. Can you hear me?
Not really. Just...
Sorry. One of the things we have to decide is what happened during the protests, and you've expressed quite a forthright view that the protesters were not armed and they were not violent. And I was just wondering where your information came from.
First of all,
before anything else, I have to say that the Islamic Republic cut off the internet for 3 days. No, it was more than 3 days. But when the internet was cut off, we did not have any precise and correct information. And before the internet was cut off and right after it was restored, a lot of videos, films was received from people that showed what was happening on the streets. It was the police force that were breaking the windows of shops, of cars. They were destroying things. Why? So that they could reproach all the protesters and say, no, the violence is yours by the protesters. And you can see that in the videos which have been made by people, how these people who are actually clad in military uniforms, how they set fire to banks, for example. But during all this time, we have heard from the government that Amir Hossein Moradi, who was executed, of course, and somebody else who is in furlough because of serious illness, was accused of being violent. Him and the other protesters are those who themselves and also their families have time and again announced and declared that they never had any weapons, but they were forced to confess that they had. That's to say that a part of the accusations of the government, the document that they base everything on, is the forced confession of these people that they have under torture, forced to give them these confessions. But when we look at the videos, we see that their hands are empty. They had no weapons. So these mothers, the mother of Pejman and the other mothers who are going to be present here, they will tell you that we're only accompanying their children. They are not only looking for the justice for the blood of their children, they are also people who went with no weapons there. The mother of Puya Bakhtiari was a teacher. She did not take a weapon to go to the streets, but with her own eyes she saw that her child was killed by a weapon. The mother of Mahdi Daemi, the mother who was with her child, she had no weapon. If she did have a weapon, she would not kneel down to save the child, would have defended automatically herself and the child. I mean, it is natural that if you see that your friend is going to be killed or your child is going to be killed, you're going to defend them. If you have a tear gas, you're going to throw it. And there's a video that shows that a child who is raising the hand, you can see that the child is telling the mother to be calm. Many of these videos that the Iranian people have prepared show that the violence was perpetrated actually by the police force, those people who were actually wearing their military uniform. And I think the most important witnesses are those who were actually accompanying their children. Thank you very much for asking this question.
I think that's all the questions from the panel. Council, do you have anything arising?
Thank you, sir. I do not have a question for the witness, but while she was giving evidence, she referred to the mother of Puya Bakhtiari, one of the first ones who were killed during the demonstrations. She's now online and is requesting to be heard by the panel. Would you agree that we interpose her?
الان آنلاین هستن مادر پویا بختیاری.
The mother of Puya Bakhtiari is online right now. Yes, so I should go then.
خیلی از مادران اینجا برام نوشتن.
Many of the mothers have written me, the mother of Ibrahim, the other mothers, they are the real witnesses.